welcome back. Everybody refreshed and caffeinated and full of swag and t-shirts and all the other stuff you could grab, hopefully. We are coming back after this break with a panel, first of our panel events today. So this is all about AI ethics. Woo, AI, yay. Practical applications. Yay! AI ethics and practical applications, moving beyond the hype. So welcome on stage your panel, and your moderator for this is Jennifer Riggins. Thank you. Come on up.
Yes, isn't that telling that we're like, AI, yay, ethics, silence. Something is wrong in the tech industry and world right now. No. Welcome, everyone. So yesterday we kind of kicked off with this title. Come on up, David. Perfect timing. Whoop! Oh, that was right into the microphone. I apologize to everyone. I should have golf clapped or so clapped. So yeah, yesterday we had Erica Stanley from Google kicking us off on this idea of considering the impact of AI, which I think was very important, and it reminded us that what we're building, or telling other people to build at this point in the room often, but hopefully a lot of us are still hands-on, could be denying people health care. We've seen in recent investigative reporting from the AP that could be deciding if children are living or dying in war zones. But also, maybe not everyone in this room is working at that level or that type of technology, but I think we all need to think about this impact. If our technology, our product, whatever we're building, were to suddenly scale, even, to the size of a Google, a TikTok, an Uber, who couldn't use it? How could it be used wrongly? How could it be used to harm other people intentionally or not? These are just some of the questions we have to constantly be asking. So while everyone here answers the first question, because it's going to be interactive, because I'm that annoying American in London that tries to get British audiences riving. So while you answer above, I want to invite our panelists to introduce themselves. So David, if you want to go first, please, welcome.
Yeah. Yes, so sorry for being late, everyone. But I'm David Sabina, associate partner at Phillips & Byrne. We do technical due diligence, working a lot for VCs and private equity firms. So on a year, we'll probably see 100 plus startups or mid-sized companies, even some corporates, or scale-ups probably is better phrase for that. Where we look at their stacks, we look at their leadership teams, we look at their architecture, we read code, just to get a sense of like, where are the risk points, where are the red flags, and try to align what's there on the ground versus what the story is that they sell through decks. So yeah, that's enough about me. Over and out.
Sarah. Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I work for Doja, a payments processing platform. I am an engineering team lead transitioning back to IC, but I'm also the head of Women in Tech. I spend a lot of my time really thinking and focusing on what women in tech are actually experiencing, and that's really evolved into thinking about ethics within tech, what we think about with diversity, equity, inclusion, and how we handle the scarily changing world that we live in.
Okay, and since it's quite clear we have a quite strong bias in this, to ground everyone in, because we want to know who we're speaking to how we want to approach this complex topic. The majority of the audience is definitely technical leadership. We've got some business and actually 4% creators of AI and ML, so that's very interesting. So we'll put up the next question while we continue introducing our panelists, please.
And I'm Sergio Rams, and I'm the head of engineering at WildE. And we are a software, data, and product consultancy company. We work with multiple clients, either integrated in their teams or in taking care of a specific scope or specific project. I believe that as many of you are doing more and more data projects, more GenAI exercises and integrations in their teams. And it's been an interesting, not journey, but space.
Yeah, an interesting word to choose. Massimo?
Yes, thanks everyone. I'm Massimo Belloni. I'm the Senior Engineering Manager for Machine Learning at Bumble Inc. Bumble operates some of the largest dating apps in the world, Bumble, Badoo, social connection apps like Geneva, And in my role with the team, we build and maintain all the trust and safety solutions that keep the platform safe, images, text, behavioral detection, Gen AI detection. So looking forward to the chat.
Okay, absolutely. So we had a really great starter yesterday from Glenn Roberts about how to create an AI policy, which less than half of all companies have right now, 3 years into this. I know we've been in AI much longer, but where everybody is all in. So that's something. If they have an AI ethics policy, no one's actually tracking those numbers, and that's, I'm sure, a quarter of whatever that something is, that 42% or whatever it last was from we've gone up from a third the previous year, 2023, but it's still one of my biggest pet peeves and shocks in the industry that they don't have AI policies. So AI ethics policy is different. So we've asked you as an audience, do you have an AI ethics policy? Overwhelmingly no. We have planned for this year. That's good. Welcome. Hopefully, we will increase that number throughout this panel to more planned for this year. Yes, and 15% I should probably ask. I think that is interesting. So I would first like to ask, raise your hand, because now I'm being that annoying American asking you to get involved. If you are actively using generative AI or AI in general in your work, right, day to day. Okay? Raise your hand if your developers are. Okay, for those that have their hands not down, you're wrong. They definitely are. Whether you've given them consent or not, it may be a shadow AI thing, but if they're finding it useful, they're using it. So we all need to be ready, and we need to think of the ethical implications of the tools we're using and those we're building. So now, let's set some table stakes, as they say. What do we mean by AI for the sake of this conversation?
I would say my focus is on Gen AI. That's the new thing, really. We've had machine learning and other AI products for years. We've just not really focused on them or called them AI in that way. Gen AI, however, has infiltrated every single aspect of everyone's lives at this point. You can't escape it. And that's where I think the ethical implications are really important and more important than ever.
But I fully agree, as is obvious that with Gen AI, my metaphor is always my parents. Like people in their 60s in Italy, they are deliberately using AI. Now, I was chatting yesterday with my dad. They was sending me an SMS of a screenshot with ChatGPT, and I was okay. My dad is using ChatGPT, but it's also true that for how much they were not aware in the past, we can argue that in the last decade, when you use social media, marketplaces, content platforms, when you try to unwind at home and you, well, let's watch this new Swedish TV show that I never heard of, that's machine learning and AI. So if it's very true that now people know and they're aware that they're using AI and Gen AI, so becomes more of a topic for the headlines, is also true that I would argue that was more dangerous in the past, or was as dangerous, because they were using it without being aware.
And there have been real episodes of AI, narrow AI, having serious consequences on decisions by using biased data or by not taking care of evaluating the results. Like there's the case of Amazon using AI to hire people, but the history of the data they had was very biased, and so the results obviously were also biased. And so, yes, Gen AI, I agree, it's a big thing, but the issues were there before Gen AI.
And building the same leads to the same data, training the AI to do the same as the same in the tech industry, which is a big problem. My favorite definition of AI I've heard recently from Nathan Lebenz from the Cognitive Revolution podcast is the ability to accomplish goals in a way we don't fully understand. For now, unexplainable and unpredictable. I think that's why we're here, because we're all using it, even those that say they're not using it in their jobs. We have to use it for customer support. We have to use it if we're searching for literally anything now. It's broken Google, I think. Like the Google results have gotten a lot worse. When I'm searching a health thing, I want the NHS results first, not whatever the AI is experimenting with me today. But it is pervasive, and it is everywhere, and it's getting at an adoption rate that I don't think we've ever seen something at this rate before. And the users, and we're not considering the ethics.
Following on from your Google point, there was a thing on Reddit where they proved that they could change the AI like summary bit at the top of Google with just a slight concentrated effort, where it was saying stuff like the best thing to put in your coffee is mud and stuff like that, where they were just playing around with it. And I think what's really scary is in this day and age with how fast everything is, how little time people actually have to evaluate what they're reading, people are just taking that AI summary as fact. And they're not then checking the sources. They're not then actually checking is what they're reading true. And that's not just the average person. That will be the engineers in our companies. That will be the, people writing copy. That will be every single person who's in a rush, who goes, yeah, that sounds about right. I don't have the time to check. Mm-hmm. And that's where it's so important, where I 100% agree. We've always been using, well, not always, we've used AI for ages. Just look at some of the issues that London CCTV has had historically with identifying people. But when it's every single person and it's so easy to manipulate, how do we make sure that there aren't not just general issues, which there will be from just blindly trusting, but the ethical issues, which are often a lot more nuanced, a lot more, micro, small changes that make it a lot harder to pick up on. It's not how it used to be, 8-9 years ago, where there was an AI bot on Twitter that suddenly became a racist Nazi overnight. It's not as overt as
trained on the internet, which
it was trained on. It was trained by Twitter.
Cesspool. Yeah,
but
just the cesspool.
It's more to do with that non-obvious, very subtle ethical changes that we have to be hyper aware of, or we're going to find ourselves in a situation where, the window's moved, the goalposts have moved, and how do we then get back?
But it's the responsibility of people in this room to make product decisions. It's not so much technical decisions, it's product decisions of signaling very well and very clearly when it's generated content, or if there's a huge tail of use cases that are very obvious, that are very simple and very effective, and they have no big risks, and it's just helping people to do their jobs, automate simple things, but that allows the humans to still be in control and always in control. But there is a product decision, it's a executive decision to make sure that the product is aligned and it lets the human be in control.
But we're very eager to give away that control. We've seen that with GDPR. I think in actuality, GDPR is a wonderful thing to protect people's data and privacy. In practice, it's inaccessible, unusable, and we are more proactively giving away our consent more than ever because we just want to do what we want to do, so we want to hit the X. So what questions should technical leadership, like the people in the room, be asking? Or what should they be asking their business partners? What should we be asking them?
What are you doing with the data, and how are you evaluating the results?
Yep.
Yeah, I would say maybe it's useful to start from a product perspective by just getting a risk registry written out with all your executives, making sure to be pretty clear or explicit about, hey, these are product features we have in mind. These are some of the risks we enumerate as having some impact to our user base, or usually impact to the user base is impact to the company. And at least then taking that downstream and try to get also like technical metrics flowing back to inform like where you are in terms of health. But I think it starts with just like enumerating what are some risks that we think of. Of course, you're going to miss a bunch of them, but I think it's just the place to start, the easiest place to start.
And it's better than nothing, as I think that it's very important to start from something that is very worrying and very theoretical as AI bias, AI fairness, to then funnel it down to, okay, but what does it mean for my specific product and for my specific users? And then start to measure at the best of what's possible, or like this is also it's something that I strongly believe myself on good is better than perfect, on will you ever be able to measure the bias or the risk of AI in your product completely, thoroughly, and comprehensively? Probably not, but this is not a problem. Like, the only big mistake would be don't do anything.
Exactly.
Is being iterative and try to, okay, let's start from the first use case. Let's try to the first product where my users, my members are directly interacting with an AI. Which are the risks? How can we measure them? Because this is also very connected to bias, because you have to understand the use case to start trying to solve for the issues.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that in terms of how you're building that product, we know that everyone will be using some form of Gen AI to build and influence how they're building that product. And that's not just using Copilot, having it write half your code, getting chat to throw out, a script that you just can't really be bothered to spend 20 minutes writing when it can do it in one. But a lot of the time, we just take it. We might analyze the code it's producing, going, okay, does this actually solve our business problem? But we're not analyzing all the different ways that it can influence us. And I think one of the big things is when we're doing that risk assessment, when we're doing that kind of thinking, how is it impacting it? It's not just how is it going to impact our customers in the short term. It's what are the risks of long-term usage in the way it can influence and shape the engineers, the product managers, the designers, the content writers. How can it shape the way that they're going to be building this product long term? We have a tendency in tech, especially when you've got a lot of scale-ups, fast-moving businesses, to think short term, think for the next year, 2 years. But what about in 5 years? How is it going to be how has it shaped us in that time as well?
And the code base is going to be a mess, is what it's going to shape the way things.
If I can add a thing on that, I fully agree, but I don't feel like with Gen AI and easy access to these technologies, things became definitely bigger and more worrying. But even when I was in elementary school or junior high school, when I was doing researches, and I remember the teacher that was telling us, don't trust everything you read on the internet, or on the issue of massive code bases that go out of control. There's always been the story of more junior engineers potentially that are copy-pasting for Stack Overflow without understanding. And with Gen AI is becoming bigger, faster, more worrying, but the seed of the issue has always been there. And it's also a cultural problem, a people problem. Then technology, as usual, scales up things massively, right?
100%. I think in the same way that, we have code reviews, and if you've got a junior, you kind of maybe put a bit more effort in and double check everything. Something that I think is a really tangible thing is implementing stricter reviews. Because at the end of the day, Gen AI does not understand business context. It does not understand the history. It doesn't understand. All it's doing is returning something with the highest probability of what it has determined to be correct. Tech is ultimately a human thing. We're building things for humans mostly. We're not robots. I think a really big thing and a really more straightforward thing that's maybe a faster thing to implement while you're figuring out your policy is reviewing your code review practices, reviewing the process you have for getting something from being written into production, be that code, be that tests. A lot of people use AI to write their tests without then having put in the human effort of thinking, what are our test cases here? So you've got quite quick, tangible things that you can do, but it takes time. And ultimately, we're in such a fast-paced industry. A lot of the time, we don't have the time, or we don't value that time. We don't necessarily value going, okay, well, it used to be that I'd spend 5 minutes reviewing this PR. Now I'm going to spend 20, and I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to this person. I'm going to read through the ticket. I'm going to make sure I understand the exception. All the things that we often might do subconsciously or we take for granted, companies are going to have to start actually emphasizing that people should allocate the time for those reviews and prioritize them instead of just pushing features out as quick as possible.
But there's also a balance between okay, I'm not going to do anything because it's too risky, versus I'm going all in because otherwise I'm going to miss the boat. If you're getting productivity gains with code being written by models, yes, you can spend a little bit more time on reviews, but it's still better than, for instance, not writing tests, or at least you have tests. It's maybe they're code generated, but at least they're tests. Obviously, you spend the time reviewing and making sure that it makes sense and you're not making your code base messier. But there's a lot of code bases that are messy and they're written by humans.
They're going to get messy. So as we move back to the idea of the ethics, we're talking about what we're building, but is this not a consideration that's earlier in the design cycle? I fully agree we need to review what we already have and see the ethical consequences of what we've built. Tools we're using, we didn't even mention the environmental impact of all this AI. We're just pushing that under the rug. We've just given up, I think, on that. But when we're technical leaders working with the business to decide what are the priorities for features, what are the questions we should be asking before we build it? And we talked about the data, so let's talk more about the data. I'd love to actually know about, because I'm sure there's users in the room pinging each other right now, no judgment. And you have pretty robust AI policy. So how did that come about? When did that come about? How did that develop? How do you continue that?
And on this front, I want to make a specific example that is going to be very general because of NDAs and stuff, but I'm going to try to, you can read between the lines. We have an AI ethics policy, and we take AI extremely seriously. As a principle stance, because we believe in that and we want to do it, but also because it allows us to build better data and AI products. Then there is the data sourcing, that it's something that, of course, you are compliant with all the regulations and even just from our ethical standpoint, but I can make an example on trying to put in concrete and practical examples, what do we mean with bias and fairness. We are a global business. Imagine something, an AI model that deals with image moderation or image verification, right? Bias is, for example, not having the same performance across different cores. That could be age, could be gender, could be location, could be everything. And here we become the big and pragmatic topic on how to do and how to deal with AI bias in practice. But from our perspective, having a model that is as unbiased as possible and is able to have the same performances across all these cohorts is not just an ethical standpoint, is also something that is important for the business. Because if on a specific geography or for a specific cohort, we are not able to have the same automation performances, means for the business that we are going to have to require a lot of massive human intervention that is costly. So to answer your question directly, after a certain scale or when the problem starts to be interesting enough, of course there should be a principled and ethical stance to solve these issues carefully, but there's also quite often a business lens, and this is more a call to action for all the technical leaders that are even potentially not directly building AI ML products themselves, is of course make the ethical battle, make the principled stance, but also trying to see how more performant and more ethical AI models can actually benefit the business, because this is something that on the long run is going to be extremely beneficial for all the parties involved.
Yeah, I guess you really need trust if you want people to pay to use your
100%.
Your product.
And it's not just a topic for AI, because trust is data breach or cybersecurity. Like these are topics, there are a lot of new topics that AI is bringing on the table, but there are also a lot of good old topics that are now becoming potentially bigger or easier to exploit. But trust is fundamental and was fundamental even before AI.
Yeah, even if it's just a reputation thing, like if you lose your reputation in your clients or prospective clients, then it's a business problem.
100%.
Yeah, I would figure, like, I think pragmatically for tech leaders, is to at least have some very basic process for starters where we regularly revisit, whether it's starting with every half year or every quarter, what kind of like high level awareness we have of this is our model registry, or these are the use cases where we think of using some AI, or actually it applies to all business, like whatever product features you have, to think about that. And then try to enumerate what are some of the risks, what is the impact, what is the cost to the business if things go awry, and revisit that on a regular basis. It's going to evolve, but you need to start somewhere. And I mean, like, we look at a lot of startups, and most of the startups we see don't have anything. They have a couple of models out there in the field, and they do some evaluations, but not as rigorously. And then something happens, and then it hurts them, and goodwill is lost, like stuff like that. You can get ahead of that, and it doesn't have to cost too much effort. It could be maybe a 1 hour or 2 hour session once a quarter with a couple of product folks, a couple of leaders in the team, to make sure you have awareness, and you just regularly visit that to extend it, and then push it like to the other folks that can take that and basically execute on it, bring in the technical metrics, keep you on track.
And cost to business is traditionally, I'm sure not in this room, CTOs either err on the side of technical or business, but your job is technically to be, not technically, your job is to be that bridge between those both sides. So cost to business is a very important way to sell ethics to people, because.
And that might mean that for some things you just spend a lot more resources because they're more critical path, and there are a couple of features where maybe we're a little bit nonchalant here, but it's warranted. It's a controlled risk to some extent. So I wouldn't advocate that everyone is like extremely militant about it, because it's not practical. You have limited resources. You have to make the right calls. But you got to start lean-ish, and yeah, that's better than nothing. Yeah.
And the EU AI categorization, following that as an exercise as a company isn't bad. There's an open source tool called consequence scanning, which isn't just ethics, but it is getting you thinking about the impact of your technology and what you're building, and gives you these questions. So these can be retrospectives too. Get your every stakeholder involved. Sarah?
I think in many ways, a lot of what we are discussing is nothing new, right? There's always been a question of what are we building? Is it ethical? Is it moral? How do we, balance capitalism via an ethical society? But AI has expedited that so much. Something that I've heard a lot of people talk about is that they're starting to use AI tools to remove bias when looking at CVs, looking at applicants. But they don't actually know the underlying data and the underlying models that are, quote, checking for that bias.
That's
and
crazy.
Those AI tools are not actively taking into account this person's a career switcher and they've got transferable skills. This person had time out for becoming a parent or health problems, and that shouldn't be held against them, because ultimately it can't think, right? Now, historically, people have had those biases, and at the end of the day, people are what, we've created the models, we've given it the data, and a lot of the time, a lot of what we are talking about, it's nothing new, but it's just so heavily been thrust into the focus because of it.
Because ATS has been going on forever. Application tracking systems have been weeding out people that look like more than half the stage by pattern, by habit, forever. So AI is definitely in everyone's job as well. I want to bring up James's question, which is, how is an AI ethics policy any different from a general business ethics policy? Ethics are often the first policy to be ignored, but I want to get to the first half of that. So what are we specifically looking for it can be part of, I think, your business ethics policy, it can be a section, but what should we be adding in or considering in the AI ethics policy?
I often think that, by the way, James is asking a lot of questions. Good on you, James.
Yeah.
I think that ethics, I think you need to couple them as well too, like cash impact or business impact. I think there is a link between them. If things go wrong on the ethics front, that has a business impact often enough. And I think that's a strong driver to get teams to be more aware of like, hey, like we're dropping a ball on this front, it's gonna cost us. So that's at least one tool that I've used somehow to like, yeah, it's kind of ethics, but I'm coming in through the back door. I'm thinking a lot about what's kind of like the economic damage to the company if we get like smeared across the press in a certain way. Maybe that's one tool to kind of like also use to like encourage people to pay more attention to it.
And following on from that, I'd argue it's more than ever, it's easier to like accidentally like go against your ethics policy because it's so easy to quickly
We're
make
giving
changes,
up our choice.
you know, quickly believe that AI summary, which then might influence something. It used to be that with ethics, it was a, you know, behind the scenes thing, or okay, well, yeah, we want to do this, but this is going to make a lot of money, and you know, we have investors and stakeholders who need that money, so we're going to go for that for now. It was more of a conscious decision, whereas now, because things are still within our hands, but it's so much, you have to actually make a conscious decision to have it in your hands and analyze your sources and double check everything. So it's a lot easier for you to kind of lose sight of that ethics policy.
And you need to give your developers, your internal customers, the permission to have that time and space. You can't just be, we have AI, you gotta be faster, I expect faster results. Because maybe the starter result is faster, but they still need to think about everything more. I wanna add to that question because Dave's question below is quite a follow-up. Other than the inherent want to be good, which should be a motivator still, but what motivator is there for ethical use? What are, more so like, what are the penalties there are for unethical use? Is it just social stigma? It's certainly not, especially if you have data or clients in the EU. This is a chiller country, I would say, than the rest of the continent, but you still are liable to those, right?
Yeah, I mean, like,
Just a quick one. I think one of the topics is that we've been all agreeing is that it's literally a worse product.
Yeah.
It's like one of the reasons is you're making a better product.
But you have to care about your customers then too, which many companies don't. I'm sure, again, not in this room.
Sorry.
yeah, we're assuming, first of all, ground rules, that we're talking to most companies that really care about building magical products, and when you care about that, then kind of like the ethics thing comes into this framing naturally, because a better performing product for everyone leads to magical experiences, everyone is happy, more people stay in the product or come back. So I think that definitely helps there. I understand it's really tricky sometimes because whatever is ethical means different things in different places. So I'm not trying to like dictate what that needs to mean for all of us, but I think just zooming in from a product lens or from a product perspective and thinking about this is where it all either starts or falls apart.
Yeah. And visit what you've already built, but then moving forward have regularly scheduled. Because if you don't schedule them, rituals kind of fall wayside, ceremonies fall wayside.
So it's a bit of a process thing there, just to make sure that it happens. Like we do it every half year. We sit down, we think about this, we have the product features, the risks, the blah, 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 the cost, and they're stay on track like that.
The remediation as well, because I think I fully agree that it's important to have a periodic review of all the risks, but then it's important not just to have the next steps, because sometimes, and again, for no one in this room, but sometimes you do this kind of retrospective or you identify issues, next steps, and then no one is accountable for the next steps, and nothing is actually gonna get done. We go back to have a little bit of pragmatism of, let's have a list of all the issues that we see. We can, of course, we are gonna promise, but then realistically, we are gonna solve in a short period of time 20% of them. But let's do it. Let's make sure that there is an accountability line, that we know who's gonna work on them, that we know how they're gonna work on them. The only thing is that in 6 months, it's unrealistic that we're gonna have solved everything, but at least we're gonna have made better, sure-free things. And this is something that I strongly believe in being very iterative and making sure that the world is a little bit a better place than how we found it 6 months before.
And you may literally require by either your integration partners, your collaboration partners, or your industry to have an audit trail of the choices you've made. So there are certainly people in this room working for well-regulated industries that this will continue to be. Or again, the EU or California seems to follow the EU in terms of laws about this. You're going to have customers that are going to be making choices because if you're not publishing and communicating your AI ethics policy, you become a risk to them. So they're not going to be your customers. You're not actually going to have customers. So I wanted to ask Sergio and David, especially this, because you're advising your clients, I think, in this, but it's up for grabs for everyone. How do you monitor? Let's more logistically, like practically, how do you monitor your AI, creating guardrails, evaluations, measuring for bias? How do you do that? Or what are you advising your clients or building with them?
Yeah, when I speak with our clients, one of the first questions I ask when we're talking about Gen AI products or ideas that they have, it's always about how are you shaping the responses and how are you evaluating the responses? Like, what is your test strategy? How are you doing that on the CI? How are you doing that in production? What kinds of There's so many techniques to evaluate the responses. There's so many tools right now in the wild to monitor, live monitor, but also measure it. So let's say for instance that you use a different model to evaluate the response, or let's say that you have everyone every day or every week you go through the responses and you do a vibe check and those kinds of things. Do you have a big text? Not coverage, but you have a lot of samples, and do you detect regressions when you change the prompt or you change the model? Is that creating issues for you? Like,
yeah, everything that you said, like, I'm totally down with that. Also, like in terms of tools, like if you're doing like the Gen AI stuff, like some people are using probably some LangFuse-like tool, or like Arise builds really cool products in this category, where you can basically track all the interactions that touch, let's say, LLMs, and especially track feedback from customers, the thumbs up, thumbs down. It's magical what it can do for you to be able to catch issues in the wild, to then bring them into your evaluation data sets, to then catch it in the future when you want to test like the latest, greatest model that just dropped on the internet through a BitTorrent link or something like that, right?
It's a fulfilling cycle.
Exactly, and then you just rinse and repeat. But I think these patterns or best practices have been there for a lot of like software engineering plus like and machine learning tradition. So it's basically just continuing with that and not just forgetting that, oh, this new LLM thing, we're just going to do a quick implementation. It kind of like we eyeballed it. It feels good. Like let's just put it out there. Like no, you have to be rigorous about it, and it doesn't have to be that hard. Like sometimes companies are struggling with evals. Start with 10 fundamental questions that you can throw at the system to get a feel for if it works well, that you can use as a metric to like figure out like where we are roundabouts, whether we get better or not. That's at least better than just eyeballing it or the anecdotal feels good to me type of thing.
Yeah, and I always say that yes, it's not deterministic, but it's still a software product.
Mm-hmm.
You still think like a software. It's building blocks. It's still building blocks.
Yeah.
It still requires humans to build it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I said that I'm very interested on the huge tail of very simple use cases that sound, it's very much grunt work that then these models and these can unlock in helping any sort of task that you can imagine. Yeah. And if you, in those tasks, it's very easy to make sure that it's not so conversational and you're just getting small responses that you can chain or that you can interact in small ways.
Yeah.
And that way it's much easier to evaluate. It's easier to ensure that it's not going haywire.
Yeah, true. And then for the tech leaders, then you talk to whoever's head of ML or AI in your organization and ask them to educate you on what the metrics are that you need to look at whatever the frequency is you look at them to understand where you're at. and just make it a tradition in the organization to be more data-driven like that, to just, like for everyone who's interested, these are the places where you'll find metrics on our models that we're using in the wild, and look everyone, they're actually improving over time, or actually something happened yesterday, we had a bit of a regression. That way it becomes a lot easier to speak about these things in a meaningful manner without it just being a feelings conversation.
But this all requires psychological safety and a blameless culture where people feel safe to speak up.
Like any engineering team.
Yeah,
Like
should
any-
be.
Something I would very quickly add, because I'm conscious of the clock, is that you can't ignore the impact of it doing your grunt work on juniors, on people entering the industry. This is how they learn. This is how they learn to make mistakes and how to recover from those mistakes. And that's how you get progression in tech, is by doing that grunt work, doing the boring stuff that you then have a deep understanding of how it works to do the more complex stuff. And something that I would put to everyone is, if you are using it more and more, what are you then doing in place to ensure that you're not leaving people behind and that you're still allowing for good career progression, and that you're, also for your own product, for your own business, you don't want to end up in a few years' time with a bunch of mid and seniors who actually don't have that fundamental and foundational understanding of how stuff works because they've just been using prompt engineering. I don't necessarily have an answer for that, by the way. I'm just saying it's something I think we all need to keep in mind when we're thinking about ethics.
Mm-hmm. So I just want to ask a quick one from the audience this is the other ethical elephant in the room, is the impact on literally the world. How do you consider the environmental ramifications of Gen AI use in your ethical frameworks?
Can I take this?
Please, yes.
I think that here it's a very good question generally, but it's not just AI. Then I'm gonna, of course, give a more specific angle on AI, but I could ask the same question over business travel, for example. Does your team travel just when it's necessary? It's actually keeping CO2 in mind. I was chatting with a friend in Barcelona the other week, and he was telling me that in his company they have a specific policy. They don't take flights for travel that are less than 6 hours by train, right? So this is something that Gen AI is a ramification. Then, from my side, for how much I am an AI leader and I make a living with AI, one of my strongest opinion is 90% of the times you don't need to use AI, right? Especially this is a relevant question for us that we are not foundational model builders. So we are not the big tech companies that are actually building these models around the source that is actually generating a lot of environmental impact, potentially, hopefully for good, right? But we are more on the side of the spectrum. On every time that we generate a token through AI, we are doing harm to the world to some extent. So we should ask ourselves, does this task really need this complexity? Does this task really need, and can go back to ethic on what's the impact, what's the good we are doing to the world, et cetera, et cetera. But to wrap up is not just AI, because again, there are so many environmental decisions that a company has to take in their policies. But then the second one is, without overcomplicating the answer too much, is use AI at the right level of complexity just when you actually need it.
Or will the narrow AI model answer the same question as well,
Local
which is much more
models,
efficient?
yeah.
Indeed.
Local
Don't
models
need to
too.
use a massive language model for a specific task on that front, 100%.
So just to wrap up, what is one thing our audience very quickly can take back this week to their teams? Where do we want to start? You got it? Go for it, Massimo.
No, I can start is, I know that the AI bias and AI ethics looks and is a massive, super complex topic, very philosophical. You were touching earlier on something that is very true, like what does it mean, ethics? Each of us potentially have a slightly different ethical standpoint. Looks like super complex, impossible to solve, and indeed, potentially it is impossible to solve completely. But the seed that I want to plant is potentially one thing at a time, try to understand what does it mean, bias for your specific product, for your specific users. The answer in this instance is never right or wrong, it always depends. That to some instances is a good thing to be iterative, to be pragmatic. You shouldn't be perfect, like it's okay to be good or it's okay to be better over time. So is start as soon as possible and start small, because otherwise it's too complex to solve.
Okay.
Yeah,
Quick.
everything, and everything you said, and experiment. Ask a lot of questions, but also experiment. Don't put your head in the sand and wait for some magic solution to solve your ethics problems. So ask a lot of questions and experiment, but also measure, because you can't answer any questions if you don't measure.
Can't improve what you don't measure, Sarah.
I guess the big question, to go back to your team leads or engineers or your internal organization, is a real review of how it is being used and what do you have in place, because you may not even realize that you have individual teams who have built their own AI policy. They might have decided as a team, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Actually start the conversation with different levels of leadership, not just high levels of leadership.
David, quick last word.
I think it's all been said. Like, it would
Yeah.
just be taking your time. So yeah, that's.
Thank you so much, David, Sarah, Sergio, and Massimo. And thank you, audience. Good luck on this journey. Get started on it.
Thanks, everyone.